What's going on, everyone? This is Brian Ka again, and I'm here once again to share my experience on how I passed the baby bar. And because I've taken it twice, once when they tested us on both three essays: criminal law, torts, and contracts, plus 100 MBE questions. And I also took the baby bar recently after they have implemented the change, which was just 100 MBE questions. So I thought that I had some perspective to share, because it's always different hearing it from professors or bar teachers who may know about the law, but they haven't taken it, or they don't really know what it's like to be in that test condition. Whereas I was just like you, because I'm assuming that if you're watching this, you have probably failed the baby bar once or twice in the past, or you are preparing for it. So I thought that by creating this channel that I can help you get past this roadblock so that you can advance into your 2L or 3L, because I know that some 2L students in some schools are allowed to take it. So here I am once again trying to share some valuable information for you. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is what I think would be the best way to study for the exam. And this is coming from my experience as a student who has failed first year of law school 3 times. And I'm not proud of it, but now looking back at my experiences, I've realized that my experience could be used by somebody out there to not make the same mistake that I have made. So if I could go back and study for this exam, this is the way I would study it. So when you first start law school, they teach you using this method called Socratic method. And what Socratic method, as you probably know, is that it's like a question and answer type of format. So if professor wants to ask you questions, he may randomly just choose a student, and the student who's chosen will have to answer according to his knowledge. And when I first started law school at a brick and mortar school, it was intimidating, because when you don't know anything about law school, then when a professor chooses you and asks you to answer something that you have no knowledge of, then it can be a pretty intimidating experience. But I think that, again, looking back, if I could start all over again, and if I were to tell somebody who's taking this exam, I would tell them to utilize class time to memorize the law, because most of you will have to take this exam after first year of law school. Now, I remember in some of my 1L class, there were professors who liked to grill me, meaning like every class he would call out my name and ask me to brief a case or ask me questions out of nowhere. And looking back, I believe that he was somebody who has changed my life, because I wasn't talkative. I never felt confident enough to speak out loud in front of people, but he forced me to do so. So, in a way, it was very helpful. But there are classes where you're given an assignment, or you're told what to brief beforehand, so there are no surprises. And what I'm talking about now is utilizing the class time that I talked about, that doesn't grill you, because when you're spending like 2-3 hours just sitting in class going through what other people or other students are briefing, you don't really learn much. Again, I mentioned that there may be professors who like to call on you and grill you, and in those cases, you may want to prepare. But in classes where you know what to expect, I would spend the entire class time, and this could be controversial because many people may not or disagree with what I'm about to say, but I would spend an hour and a half, if your class is 3 hours long, to just look at your outline and just memorize word to word. Because what I'm experiencing now also is that I'm taking community property, and there are students who are, much older than me, 50s, 60s, and they love to talk, and they love to sound like a lawyer, and I think this is what gets them going. But what they're missing is that any laypersons or people who are given something to read, and if you ask them to brief it or talk about what they've read, anybody can do that. But what sets attorneys apart, or what sets students who are A students apart, those students who are doing better than other students apart in classes, is that they have memorized the law. And I think the same goes for the attorneys too, because again, anybody can read a bunch of articles or cases for law school and talk about them. Any English majors, history majors, which I was, as long as you have a decent reading comprehension skills, then you can read and talk about it. And that's not what sets A students or attorneys apart from the rest. What actually sets A students or attorneys from the rest is that they have memorized the law. And I don't know if you have had a chance to look over the bar questions. I have, because I have said this in the previous video, that after now less than 3 years, it's already been about almost 3 months now since I started my second year of law school. I'm planning to take the bar right away. So I have read every single community property essay given on the previous bar exam, except for like hybrid questions, meaning if it's like community property / wills, if it's like community property / trusts. I haven't gone over those because I haven't taken trusts or wills yet, and I will, soon. But any tests that was given under community property and not hybrid, I have done every single one of them. Like some essays, I have done it twice or 3 times. And why am I talking about this? Is that you can't really write for the bar exam unless you have memorized the law completely. If you haven't memorized the law, then you can't analyze or you can't get a passing grade on these tests. So same thing goes for the baby bar, because baby bar still will test you on 100 multiple choice questions, and these questions, unless you know the black letter law from front to end, and I'm not exaggerating. Some people may say, like, you don't really need to know the law. You just have to know half-ass or do half-ass and still manage to take the test. And you're wrong, because even after they have changed the format of the baby bar to 100 multiple choice questions only, the passing rate, for example, my school, there are only 2 students who became second years after their first year. And I'm sure there were more than 20, possibly 30 students. And I'm the only one that took the test and passed from 10 years ago, because I went to law school 10 years ago and I took a 10-year break. And then I decided to take the baby bar and I passed. But other than me, there are only 2 second year students that have managed to become second years from 1L. So that's like not even 20%. And I remember, I think I talked about this in the previous video, that my community property professor said, we have students who have taken the regular, meaning SA plus MBE baby bar, and all these students have passed. And I wish that this is what she said. I wish that they didn't change the format of the test, but I don't think that anybody can take away from people who have passed the recent 100 multiple choice question baby bar, because again, my school, the passage rate going from first year to the second year was not even 20%. Other than me, again, it's 2 out of 30 people. I can't even do math on top of my head right now, but it's that low. I was able to look at another unaccredited distance learning school, because they have released their percentage of how many students took the June 2024 test and have passed it. And even that school, I believe the passage rate was something like 20% or even lower. So that tells you, unless you really, really know the law, you're not going to pass this test. And again, I remember studying for this test with AdaptiBar 10 years ago, and I kind of knew the law, but I didn't really memorize everything word for word. And what happened was that even if I did 200 questions on AdaptiBar, and if I was trying to figure out why that answer was wrong, I couldn't understand why it was wrong. And thinking back, it's because I didn't have or I didn't memorize the law. So when you take the test and they give you an answer, you don't know why it's right or wrong. And even if you're given the right answer with the right explanation, you're not going to understand why that particular answer was right. So if you can, unless your class has a professor who likes to grill you, like the professor that used to grill me, and again, he made me into a stronger person, or a better speaker, somebody who's not afraid to talk anymore, because I really was. Unless you have that type of class, I would spend an hour and a half or 3 hours, depending on how long your class is to just memorize the law. And memorizing, I don't think that there's any shortcut to it. I'm a basketball player. I'm at over 40 years of age. I still go out to the park and I shoot around all day. And one thing about basketball too is that if you have the right basic fundamentals down, and with that basic fundamentals, if you're able to practice and practice, you're gonna get better. And I have kind of applied the same knowledge into law school bar exams or in-class midterms or finals, is that as long as you have the basic fundamentals down, meaning as long as you have memorized the law. For example, if I'm in a community property class, then I should know everything. Well, not everything, because you can't really know everything, but basically every law that the previous bar exam has tested on, and know all the formulas and know how to distinguish between, separate property or community property. For example, if the value of the business has increased from a previous separate property into the marriage, then you should know like formulas like Pereira or Van Camp, and literally know how to do the calculations, and know when each doctrine applies, what situations, and basically have all of that in your head. I know it sounds like a lot, when you first do this, you may be overwhelmed, because at first it seems like you have to memorize a lot. But again, applying the basketball knowledge, if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, you have no choice but to get better. And this is what I've learned in regards to passing the baby bar and doing really well in classes, is that going back to my previous point, these students, they're brilliant and they love to talk. And again, anybody could talk, and their talking is based on what they believe, what an attorney may say. But everything that they say is not from what they've memorized in regards to the law that we're supposed to learn. They're just talking as if, anybody else could say what these students are saying. So again, you have to really, really, really memorize the law. Second is I took Barmax, and one thing about Barmax is they have questions around like 380 questions, I'm not sure, for contracts, like 200 something questions for torts, think under 200 questions for criminal law, and they have a mix section, which is a section that includes all three of these categories. And I think that was like a little bit under 400. So I think if you add all these together, they have around less than 1,000 MBE questions available. But one thing that was good about BarMax for me is that you are allowed to type your questions, and attorneys or bar teachers will always make sure to answer your questions. And a lot of times when you click the explain section, other students have already asked the same questions that you may have, because for each question that's difficult, there are about 8 or 9 threads, sometimes like 15 threads, and everybody talks about like why B is the answer, why isn't D the answer, and the BarMax teacher or bar teacher from that company will always make sure to leave a comment that is really, really easy to understand. And this is a little bit different from how AdaptiBar did. And I'm not sure about how AdaptiBar does now, because I took that program 10 years ago, and at that time I didn't pass this exam. But with BarMax, I did manage to pass. So for me, it was good. It's just that when you're taking the real baby bar exam, you're not going to see any repeats. And that's one thing that I was very surprised about, is that a lot of people on blogs said that these MBE questions tend to repeat itself. But in this recent baby bar 100 questions, like some questions may have had similar fact patterns, maybe like 3 or 4 questions I still remember, but the question that they were asking was completely different from previous bar practice questions that I was able to practice with. So I was getting like on BarMax like close to 90%, but when I looked at my passing score for the baby bar exam that I recently took and passed, I was pretty surprised, because my score wasn't as high as I expected. Because when you're averaging almost 89%, 90%, and I have taken those, I have done every single question 3 or 4 times, and I studied for this for a year. So 1 year of preparation with BarMax, I've done every single question, looked at the right answers, wrong answers, looked at the explanations, and then I repeated this over and over and over again. And when I actually took the baby bar exam, my score wasn't very high. So I mean, that should tell you that 2 students who have managed to become second years at my law school, and other, there are only like 1 or 2 which I'm aware of that are unaccredited distance learning law schools in California, and there's just one that's like actually reputable, because I've seen graduates from that school and students that talked about their experiences. So I know that school is just as good. But when I looked at their passing rate for the recent baby bar exam, I was taken aback, because the passing score was so low. So again, I'm not here to scare you in any way. I'm just here to be very honest about the passing rate. Even after they implemented these changes to this exam, it's still a very hard test. And if you're not ready to take the test, and if you haven't memorized all the laws that are necessary for you to pass, I would wait. Take the next administration test, because again, if you do half-ass, you're not going to pass. So, and I'm here because I want you to pass, and I'm just being very honest. And lastly, I don't think that I did a good job of practicing for this exam under time conditions, because I remember when I started number one on the day of the testing, it took me like more than 3-4 minutes in order for my head to get in the moment, because you're gonna be in a room that you have never, well, you're gonna go there once because they require you to go to the testing center, and it's called Prometric Testing Center, and you're gonna have to go there about a month before and just kind of see what's out there, see what kind of computer that you're gonna have to use, and kind of get used to the surroundings. But nonetheless, when you start taking the test, you're not gonna zone in, or in my case, it took me a long time, and by the time I finished my first 50 questions, I almost didn't finish it. I remember I had less than 5 minutes, and I had 6 questions left for the first 50. So I didn't think that I was gonna finish the first 50, because as soon as you finish the first 50 and realize that the way your reading speed has to pick up, then the next 50, you tend to hurry and you're more in the zone. But the first 50, you're not going to be in the zone. So I would recommend you to, if you can, practice under time conditions, because that's one thing that I wish I had done. And for the real bar exam, I may actually practice under time conditions, because I was very surprised at how fast time went by. And again, I almost didn't finish the first 50. And I don't think that I would have passed it unless I finished all 100, because again, it was a difficult test, and I felt ready. But after I finished all 100 questions, I came out and it felt like I didn't feel good about it, because the test was so hard. So you have to prepare, you have to memorize, and make sure to think about what I said about how you should study for it, because if you sit in class and just memorize the law, first of all, you're gonna ace the tests. All the tests given in law school are basically bar exams, just different fact pattern. And before I knew this, I was creating my own outline, which I told you not to do. I was writing professor's notes, but obviously that has nothing to do with the test. But right now, the community property professor, she's very good, and she literally organized her class so that you can learn every law that you need to know in order to pass this pass the bar exam under community property. But that's very rare. Even my torts, he's awesome, and my contracts professor, they were very good, but what they taught had nothing to do with how I would perform for the bar exam. So if you can spend all your time in class just memorizing the law, I think you'll be all right. And make sure to look at previous bar questions and just keep practicing. And if you keep practicing, then you'll realize one day that you're ahead of everybody in class, and you're gonna be just, you know, running laps around your colleagues, you know, and you're gonna be talking about all these laws, and they'll have no idea what you're talking about, and kind of point fingers at you because they have no idea, but that's because you're so much ahead of them. So I hope that this video was helpful to you, and in the next video, I don't know when it's going to be, I hope to share some more insights, more valuable information, so that I can help you pass the test. And also, if you're struggling with first year of law school, hopefully you can watch this video and get some tips so that you can pass with flying colors and become 2L and 3L and 4L in certain law schools, and eventually pass the bar exam. All right? So thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you guys next time.